Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt. It is December 26th, 2016, and you've reached Venus Unplugged. I know I haven't done some Blog Talk Radio in a couple of weeks because it's continual computer problems. And now my Facebook seems to have switched to an old Facebook, but it will all be handled hopefully this week or when Mercury goes direct. Just going with the flow here. So what we're doing is we're continuing with the myth of Persephone, Demeter and Persephone in the way of the underworld. And today's episode is going to be about Kore, Kore. That is Persephone's name as child before she goes through the initiation rites of this myth. Now, I think it's important that for the next couple of years, at least, we need to see life as an initiation, because Persephone, it's a story, it's a mythology of how to transform victimization. You know, the child can be the victim, but the child is also the divine child. So there may be a wound that we are given that we need to work through and understand. You know, those moments of, why does this keep happening to me? It's because of the nature of the wound that we come in with. We actually can have post-traumatic stress from other lifetimes. Who knew? And so we have wounds. And if we just keep on identifying with the wound, we become the victim. And everybody else becomes the hero. And we never go into the journey into the underworld. We're given lots of opportunity, but we don't always see it for what it is. So if you are experiencing life from the point of view of the victim, you also will be given many opportunities or be able to say, you know, I'm going to want to turn this around. And first I want to begin to view this as a living myth within of from victimization to the journey into the underworld, into becoming queen. And Persephone, now, Persephone, when she becomes Persephone and queen of the underworld, not only is she the wife of Pluto or the underworld or death, she also is given tremendous powers. And she's like the ruler of ghosts, and she can carry effects onto and curses of man, and it's through the tension of the opposites of a journey, right, between divine child, Kore, and Persephone, and of course Demeter, her mother. That's the tension of the opposites where the divine child is born, a new version of ourselves and in our lives. And as we change within, the external changes. And yes, we need to be part of the external and to make the changes that, or at least begin to make some suggestions about positive changes or that can be made in the world. But it starts in our own world. It starts personally, and then we go locally, and then we can move on into other realms of the culture, because the culture is in a great period of initiation, not victimization, initiation. You want change? Think of creative ways. Make them simple. The simplest ones are the easiest to remember and the most effective, and they will change. And they will change the course of history, too. So what we want to understand here is that Persephone is initiated, and through her descent and return into a new identity. And that can contain and negotiate the opposites of the upper world and the underworld. And we think of initiations as intentional rites of passage, intentional rites It didn't happen to you. It is an opportunity to see, oh, I can choose to be the wounded child that is not connected to the divine child, because the divine child is the archetypal child and knows and has great wisdom. Right? But it's the descent, it's the preparation of the initiate provides him or her with guidance for a successful completion of the descent and return cycle of initiation. But life itself administers initiations to both the prepared and the unprepared. And I'm sure we've all noticed that in the last couple of weeks. The majority of people of our culture who receive an initiation into the descent of victimization are children who are, of course, unprepared. How could this happen? This is terrible. Well, it is happening, and it is terrible, and it is an initiation. And we are provided with answers, but we have to make the descent. So the culture provides them with little or no guidance and for returning from the descent to a new identity. The predominant hero ideal provides only stoicism. So it's like, we're the hero and we're the superhero and everything, but that's the hero. The opposite of the hero is the descent. Or sometimes in the hero mythos, vengeance. There are ways to resolve victimization. Not this time. We're evolving in a completely different way. So these responses do not really foster a real return from the underworld. Rather, they just freeze the victim in an experience in place of the central fact of identity. So you come back pissed, but not whole. So the way in which Demeter and Kor move through their initiation and descent and transform the betrayal of their innocence can provide very different guidance, forming a kind of retroactive preparation for the initiation descent of victimization. Persephone returns, not as the nameless Kor maiden, the unconscious suffering child, but queen of the underworld. But we are going to address Kor, the child, the uninitiated one, the innocent one. And the child is truly innocent. But when the call for initiation or the victimization, that is the call that to the journey, so we are no longer a victim. We become we learn and we discover, and we can do this through many, many different, conscious or unconscious. We're going, all right? So we want to also understand that the purpose of mythology and the archetypes by which the way mythology is constructed, according to Carl Karenia, mythology is the ability to understand what is through what was. Mythology is the ability to understand what is through what was. Not in the same sense as a scientific curiosity, where man is determined to find the origins of the universe, but more in the context of helping contemporary man progress successfully through the daily motions and dramas of his everyday life. So that's what living mythology is. People will say, well, this doesn't make any sense. If this can't be it, what does this have to do with my life or modern life? It has everything to do with it. So we are constantly participating in myth. We're in the myth, and the myth is in us, just like we have a soul, but we are ensouled. So participants of myth, they're used to step into the primordial path that they can see and their futures and define their identities. They must see who they were before they can see who they're becoming. Thus, the gods and the goddesses of mythology represent spiritual ideals, paradoxes. Learn what the living paradox is in your life. Both things are true. It's called the tension of the opposites or paradoxes. If we choose one over the other, we will continue to be lopsided. The paradox is when we can bring the opposites together. We're not choosing which one we like and dislike, or what's good and what's not good, because they belong together. Yep. Shadow and light, it belongs together. Life and death belong together. They're not separates. So that's what, the spiritual ideals and paradox that allow man to exist in ways through myth. Now, Karenina even identifies two major archetypes of the divine in Greek mythology that represent paradoxical attribute. It's the primordial child and core. And in the core myth is both mother and daughter to herself. And this is true in males too, where their anima will be mother, daughter unto herself. So when we begin to understand how to also tend to the wounded child, because unconsciously, so often with the wounded child, we don't realize it's actually a living part of it. It's a divine part of us, or it has a connection to the divine, and we give it over to people or situations that are really cruel to that child, who have no connection to their own inner child. So, of course, they abuse one another. We have to stop and say, hey, wait a second. Am I the abusive mother that allows or gives in to, let's say you're allergic to something but you eat it anyway, or you know that a certain behavior or a certain friendship is not good for your soul. You believe the lies of that and you keep on going in because you want to be nice. Nice isn't going to get you anywhere. You want to be true. You want to be whole. And sometimes that means you just can't please others. There's no way that the pleasing, because the child pleases to survive. So when we become a victim, we have learned, let me please the abuser, and at least I'll get through the day. But when we decide, no, I'm going to go through this rite of passage, that life is presented. You don't have to go far. Just look at the burdens in your life, or look what you're dealing with, or look at the woundedness or the illnesses. What are going on in your life? This is your call of opposites. So the sentimentality that we can have about death and dying, it can be the death of an ideal, or that somebody is leaving the planet, right? Transitioning into the opposite of life. Need to be careful to not be totally sentimental, like, oh, well, they're leaving, so that makes everything that they did, which was completely unconscious and wounding, they don't automatically become divinities. They'll be back. So we need to be very aware of the wholeness of life and its beloved opposite, death. Because we're constantly moving through those experiences. So willingly or unwillingly, the core Persephone woman, we have to renounce the innocence, the maiden innocence, like, whoops, I did it again. I didn't know. Well, you did it 100 times, you should know. Or if something, see what repeats again and again. And then say, well, let me see it from the other side. Well, let me see it from its opposite. Maybe, I contributed in some way by not making a very strong stand. And no, you will not hurt me ever again. And there are times you can love somebody very much, but they've wounded too many times. They're completely unconscious about it. There is no way they're going to cop to it. Even if you explain it, it's like, nope, not going to happen. That they have to understand within themselves, which means they need to go through the pain of their own behavior or unconsciousness. Very few people really do something truly on a evil or cruel way consciously. Do they do it? Yes. There are some people that are just naturally cruel. So recognize that and stay away from them. If every time you work with somebody or you call with somebody, or it could be a family member, and you just feel bad, that's not your frenemy, man. You just separate. And even if you have to be in the same household or within that person, you can just be quiet, go within yourself, protect yourself, with rings of gold or the color indigo, infuse yourself with the color indigo, which is the color of invisibility, and protect your inner child. That's how you become the loving mother to yourself. I know that's my boo-boo, or I know that is my post-traumatic stress boo-boo. Whatever it is, you're not letting another at it. That's what the loving mother does. Don't poke the mother bear, because you're going to be in for a big surprise. The mother bear or the lioness, or actually any animal and their children, they're not going to sit down and go into therapy with you. They're going to rip your head off, because that's the instinct. So I'm not suggesting we rip one another's head off. Although you may be tempted, it's be able to say, I will not allow this anymore. And no matter how many times people can try to trick you, you say, no. They don't know this about themselves. So you can stay silent, and you can say that you are in the presence of a mystery, which, of course, this time of the year is the great mystery. We are in the presence of a mystery. And the love and respect that we have for mystery, we don't go looking for the answers. It is a mystery. We are not allowed to have the answers. But logos is the answer. The answer will come. First, we have to, or at the end of knowledge, when we go searching for wisdom and knowledge, no matter how much you search, no matter what you do, you end up at this place of mystery. And the mystery is the sense of being in awe, like, whoa. Or you get this feeling to not trespass. It's like, let me just sit with my not knowing. Poetry is a lot like that. Suggestion, not knowing. Or the arts, we can look at something and it's not necessarily a conclusion or today's news. It's this mystery of the eternal archetypal images. So we're at this great place of mystery, which is going to bring great change. So, 1 minute at a time. So I found this quote, which I thought was very interesting. It's always maiden and always mother. So it's the story of Kor and Demeter. And the following is a complete statement of a noble Abyssinian woman, recorded by the German ethnologist and cited by Karl Karenyi in the famous essay Core. That's Karl, C-A-R-L, Karenyi, K-E-R-E-N-Y-I. Contemporary of Jung, they were actually BFFs, and they the living myth was very much part of their world and what they shared in their friendship, and Karenyi was a recorder of myth and interpreter of myth. So here we go. I thought this was very interesting. Now, this is an Obsidian woman, so we're talking like, I don't know, probably 800 years ago. How can a man know what a woman's life is? A woman's life is quite different from a man's. God has ordered it so. A man is the same from the time of his circumcision, his birth, to the time of his withering. He is the same before he has sought out a woman for the first time and afterwards. But the day when a woman enjoys her first love cuts in her in two. She becomes another woman on that day. The man is the same after his first love as he was before. The woman is from the day of her first love another. That continues so through all of her life. The man spends a night by a woman and goes away. His life and bodies are always the same. The woman conceives. As a mother, she's another person, then a woman without child, and she carries the fruit of the night for 9 months in her body. Something grows in her life that never again departs from it. She is a mother. She is and remains a mother, even though her child dies, through all of her children die. For at one time she carried the child under her heart, and it does not go out of her heart ever again. Whether the child is born, whether the child is never allowed to be born for whatever happens, all right? And not even when the child is dead. The child will always live in the heart. He does not know the difference before love and after love, before motherhood and after motherhood. He can know nothing. Only a woman can know then and speak of that. That is why we won't be told what to do by our husbands. A woman can only do one thing. She can respect herself, and she can keep herself decent. She must always be as her nature is. She must always be maiden and always be mother. Before every love, she is maiden, and after every love, she is mother. In this, you can see whether she is a good woman or not. So this is from the science of mythology. Now, I think in modern worlds, that's not entirely true. That men have certainly evolved to be able to relate to the feminine, and certainly are becoming aware of the feminine within themselves. So I don't see this as so black and white. Certainly a man does love and is loved in ways that a woman cannot perceive. And they're quite extraordinary in that love. But we're talking about Core's awakening. So Core, as the child, as this flower-like child, is everything. And some say that, Core was 7 when she was abducted into the underworld by her uncle. So there's this incestuous dynamic. And incestuous in this term means there's always a pulling back into family or familiar. And one of the greatest journeys of consciousness, or the tension of the opposites, is when we don't return to what is familiar. Now, for a long time, for those of us that choose wholeness, we will experience great guilt. It's called the guilt of individuation. So it's the more difficult path in so many ways, because we cannot go back to the old way. But we must, as our journey of individuation becomes more conscious, we must bring a gift back to the culture that we have symbolically left. So this is why we're artists and creators and writers and poets and healers. And so we leave the way that the people reincarnated to live their life, which is fine, but may not be for you. But your gift back to that world will be your natural gift, that you struggled the paradoxes within yourself, and you struggled towards, if not completely healing the wounded child, at least relating and knowing when the wound is up and you're coming from the wound, or the wound is being ignited by someone else or something else, and you become the wise person that says, I'm not going to allow this. Or I see a situation that's going to be dangerous, or the children of tomorrow are not going to have a tomorrow if we don't change today in effective ways. Not this, why did this happen? It's done. It happened. That's the day we change course. So that's part of this time of the year, and that certainly is what's happening in our world around us. And so in this ancient story, which is as modern today as ever, that we begin to realize that the function of Hades, death, or the underworld, it's to carry the core, the child, downward into a new consciousness of the inner movements of her body as a woman, as a vessel of creation, as the great life-death cycle that dimly and distantly belonged only to the outer world, and now dramatically announces itself within her uterus in the form of, her first blood. That's a very important moment in a woman's life, her first blood, and it's not understood and it's not honored enough. It's part of what the ancient mysteries were about. Now, for the male, or the male aspect within ourselves, we go on more of a heroic journey. So we could be having simultaneous journeys happening. It's not linear. It's not one thing at a time. It's multiple levels. Psyche knows how to take care of it. This is why we're unconscious, too, because we'd be so confused. We'd be frozen. We wouldn't be able to move. All right. So through our first loss, it's the loss of blissfulness and almost a symbiotic oneness in this story, mother and daughter, and oneness that begins in the womb itself, where they both are, and then the beginning of time, and united at the very source of life itself. So core, which is the flower-like, the very essence of girls, was a girl or the young child, and their beauty and their innocence. But they're doomed, as we all are, because like blossoms, they have to fall and fade to become mother and then become a wise woman. So this is part of what this journey is about, and we're certainly going to be giving due opportunity for initiations and wise women. So not quite sure where this is going to go in the realm of Facebook, but I'm going to have my Facebook genie come and fix all this so that you will be getting this properly. So in the meantime, you can go to my website, LloRaineNeithardt.com, LloRaineNeithardt.com to find Blog Talk Radio, and in the meantime, we'll get everything fixed. I will not be speaking next week for the new year, but I will the following week. So have a glorious discovery and journey into the fullness of who you are as the divine created you. Bye-bye.
Napa know-how.
The Napa guy knows not to judge a man by his car's multicolored paint job or absence of modern gadgetry. Who cares if it's technically old enough to vote and the windows are powered by the strength of your left arm? Your monthly payment is zero, and it'll stay that way. Because with over 500,000 parts and a little Napa know-how, you can keep anything on the road. She may not be pretty, but she's all yours. That's Napa know-how.
Napa know-how.